So you want to know a little bit more about Southgate's curriculum? I'm here to walk you through it. I'm LeAnne. I'm the director of Southgate Creative Writing School in Aalborg, Denmark. So here's what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to go over my own educational background and what I loved about it and what I wished for, and then how I took both of those things and turned it into Southgate Creative Writing School. I'll also do an overview of the curriculum and then a conclusion about where Southgate is headed. So I went to Penn State University where I got my bachelor's degree in film, and then I moved out to Los Angeles where I worked in the film and then the music industries before I moved back to the East Coast and I got my MFA, my Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. So one of the things that I really loved about the program were my instructors. They were so inspiring. They were published poets, fiction writers. They were wonderful. So they really created this environment that we call in Denmark, hygge. So it was this hyggelig environment, very cozy and a warm, safe environment in which we could share our creative writing. I also had time that was dedicated to writing. So I had been working full time in LA, and this was, 3 years just spanning out in front of me where I was going to be able to write and read and study creative writing. So I was really excited about just having this block of time dedicated to this thing that I had a passion for. And the other thing that came out of it, which I was not expecting at all, was I was awarded a teaching assistantship where I was asked to teach freshman courses at Penn State. And I was so nervous when I went into my first class, but I just had the best students. And I walked out of that class just thinking, wow, I love teaching. So I ended up putting all of that together and I learned how to be a teacher and I loved it. There were some things that were missing for me as a student. I had been working out in Hollywood, after my bachelor's degree, and there was sort of this resistance in my MFA program to any kind of form of writing that was sort of outside the literary genre. And I personally just felt like I wanted to explore that. So what I did was got together all the things that I wished for. So, for example, I wish that I had had more craft classes. There's this idea that the craft of writing cannot be taught, and I couldn't disagree more. So, what other types of art are out there? Painting, you go to school for painting, right? You learn all the different techniques, you study different eras in time. What about dance? If you go to ballet school, you're learning technique, endurance, form. All of these things are taught for other forms of art, but there seems to be this societal resistance to the idea of doing the same thing for writing, that somehow it should just come intrinsically. It's like in your genes. Although I do believe that the talent that you have is something that you just have, this can still be taught. This art form can still be taught. So I found books that said that they could teach me the craft. And I found books on how to write poetry, how to write fiction, how to write literary fiction, how to write trauma, how to write horror stories, for example. I love zombies. So even though this felt really transgressive, I started with these books and I just started reading them. The first one that really influenced me was Natalie Goldberg's Long Quiet Highway. And this really influenced me both as a writer, but also as a teacher. The next one is Stephen King's book on writing. So even if you don't like Stephen King's genre, you might still really enjoy this book because he talks about his journey and his process. So his journey consisted of collecting hundreds of rejections before he wrote Carrie. And he wrote Carrie and he thought it was trash, which is where he threw it. which is where Tabitha, his wife, found it. And she's like, no, this is the one. So he had that encouragement to send it to his agent, which he did. Now he's, a highly successful author. Okay. Anne Lamott, I love her sassiness, her sarcasm, her worldview, her view on life. I just love her tone. So this is her book, Bird by Bird. I highly recommend. And another one I highly recommend that we use at Southgate is Jessica Brody's Save the Cat. Potentially you've heard of this one as well already. If not, go check them out. So there were things that I wished for, right? I had questions like, how do I revise? How do I edit my manuscript? I had already written a screenplay. I had already written a novel. What do I do with these things? How do I get an agent? How do I get published? Who are the gatekeepers to this mysterious industry? And I also wished for a less competitive environment. There was this sort of understanding, as I have discovered in a lot of art schools, this understanding that the students must be competitive and must critique one another, break each other down. No, I don't believe that. I just don't subscribe to that theory at all. I think we can have a non-competitive environment in which we encourage one another, we lift each other up, and we start with just the foundational aspects of the art and tell each other, what are we doing well? Like, let's keep doing that. And then we learn other aspects of the craft that we can discuss and improve upon. So I had this idea. Now, about Southgate's curriculum, it is 4 years long and it consists of 8 semesters, and each semester is theme driven. So in the fall, you would have science fiction and fantasy. In the spring, you have literary realism, so on and so forth. So we also study children's literature, narrative complexity, the Gothic, romance, mystery and crime, and seriality and transmedia. And then within each semester, you have 6 courses, and each course has 10 classes. So we start with seminar, which is the historical, social, and cultural context of the genre or the theme that we're studying for the semester. Next, you have the genre course, and in that course, you're reading primary texts from the canon within that genre. So here you can see a reading list for our romance semester, and we start all the way back in 1740 with Samuel Richardson's novel called Pamela, or Virtue Rewarded. And we go through a couple hundred years of romance novels, including some titles that you might recognize already, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, for example, but also more contemporary titles like Heartstopper. So what I did was taking that feeling of not fitting in and turning it into an inclusive environment. Taking the anxiety that I felt from a competitive environment, turning that into an environment that was nurturing, relaxing, and non-competitive. I wanted to take the traditional understanding of literature and turn that into the idea of embracing other genres and forms of creative writing. And to the question, how do I write a book? I turned that into the toolbox course. What do I do with the books when I'm finished? Turn that into the business course. And then I also changed the rules for the creative writing workshop to be supportive and encouraging of one another. And all of that together turned into Southgate Creative Writing School, the art and business of storytelling. We are an inclusive school, and we would love to hear from you if you have questions about applying. Don't be afraid to send an email, reach out, and ask us some questions. We'd be happy to meet with you on Zoom, answer your emails. You can send them to info@southgateschool.dk.